So let's get right into what happened this week in Parliament. The first bill is a new bill, the Corrections Management of Prisoners and Prisoners' Property Amendment Bill. This bill amends the Corrections Act 2004 to establish a clearer statutory basis for the safe, lawful and humane management of a small group of prisoners who pose an extreme risk that the Department of Corrections manages in prison. So all the parties voted for it, apart from Te Pāti Mori and Te Kuta Whereas, and here is the reason why.
Well, this bill prohibits the use of prolonged solitary confinement by introducing minimum requirements for meaningful human contact. The bill also authorises greater use of segregation and separation of prisoners and new powers to manage prisoner trust accounts and destroy property connected to and intended to prevent unlawful activity.
This bill moves on to Select Committee. Then we have a few members' bills that happened on Wednesday. First with the Carter Trust Amendment Bill in its third reading. So what this bill does is that this bill winds up the Carter Trust, established under the will of the late Charles Rooking Carter, and enable public trust to make distributions as executor of the will. The reason that this is being put forward in Parliament is that this is actually an electorate bill coming from local council or who needs a law change in order to enact things such as this. So all parties agreed to it and it is now law. Moving on, we now have the Modern Slavery Bill, which is actually a bipartisan bill sponsored by both Labour's Camilla Bellich and National's Greg Fleming. Now, what this bill does is that it implements a statutory framework to strengthen and coordinate actions to combat modern slavery. All parties voted for it, apart from ACT, and here is the reason why.
Let me be absolutely clear. Modern slavery is a moral abomination. The exploitation of human beings has no place here in New Zealand or around the world. There is not a single person in this House who is soft on slavery. I don't believe there is a single one. But that is actually not the question before us today. The question is whether this bill, as it is drafted, will meaningfully make a difference here in New Zealand, or whether it will simply make us feel like we have done something about modern slavery.
This bill passes and moves on to the next stage. Now we have the Financial Markets International Money Transfers Amendment Bill. This is from Labour's Arena Williams. What this bill does is that it amends the Financial Markets Conduct Act to require greater transparency for fees charged on international money transfer services. National voted against it, but all other parties voted for it, and here is the reason why National voted against it.
We are in the process of passing through this Parliament 3 bills regulating our financial services sector, a trifecta there to ensure that they're more effective.
This bill moves on. Then we have the Residential Tenancies Registration of Boarding House Landlords Amendment Bill in its first reading. This is from Labour's Jenny Saliza. This bill makes changes to the Residential Tenancies Act 1986 to require the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development to create and maintain a register of boarding houses and boarding house landlords to better monitor compliance with residential tenancy laws. All parties voted for it, and it moves on. Next, we have the Drug Overuse Assistance Protection Legislation Bill in its first reading from Green MP Kahurangi Carter, and the bill is intended to ensure that people who call for help when they are with someone who is experiencing a drug overdose or adverse reaction, that they are protected from being charged for low-level drug offences. So National and New Zealand First voted against it, and here are the reasons why.
There are a couple of comments I'll make around how the police respond where there is a health crisis, and it is noted that they do routinely use discretion on minor possession in instances where life-saving help is sought. Health services treat anyone in a crisis without refusing them or without billing. We have a wonderful system in New Zealand where it is largely universal, and it will get out there and render those services of support to people when they need them most.
But in my instances of experience in this space, Madam Speaker, it is not fear of prosecution that prevents people from seeking help. It is a lack of knowledge, it is a lack of awareness, it is a lack of appreciation in the seriousness and severity of people's conditions. I have unfortunately attended deaths where it has been alcohol overdose, where people have thought, I'll just put them in the car and they'll sleep it off, and they have died, tragically, young people. And that is a lack of awareness, that is a lack of appreciation, that is not taking the situation seriously, that is not appreciating what harm these chemicals and substances cause to young and old bodies. It is really tragic. And I think there is a lot we can do in this space to build awareness, to appreciate what a simple call for help can do for anyone.
This bill passes and moves on to the next stage. Then we have a government bill now, the Serious Fraud Office Amendment Bill, in its first reading. This is in the name of Paul Goldsmith, and what this bill does is that it amends the Serious Fraud Office Act to ensure that the Serious Fraud Office can more effectively carry out its role by updating provisions relating to search warrants and evidence admissibility. Everyone voted in favour of it, and the bill moves on to the next stage. And then finally we have the Local Government Auckland Council Transport Governance Amendment Bill in its third reading. This bill intends to improve the transportation system in Auckland by establishing the Auckland Regional Transport Committee to undertake strategic transport planning, transferring most transport functions from Auckland Transport to Auckland Council, allocating decision-making for local transport functions to Auckland local boards, and reforming the role and functions of Auckland Transport. And it is in the name of Chris Bishop. Everyone voted in favour of it, and the bill is now law. That brings us to the end of the video. Thank you so much for making it to the end. If you like the video, please feel free to give it a like down below and subscribe to see more content just like this. And of course, feel free to spread the word about my channel. The support is much appreciated. If you want to see more content right now, to the left you'll see my latest election prediction video, and to the right you'll see last week's This Week in Parliament. But as for now, I will see you in the next one, which will very likely be whenever the Roy Morgan poll comes out. But until then, I will see you in the next video.